Back to the daily grind with the only free MMA channel that fucking matters, full-time MMA. And these are the UFC Fight Night Mexico City, headlined by Sergio Pettis, Brandon Moreno predictions. Co-headlined by Randa Marcos versus Alexa Grasso. We got some good fights on the card. The card's gonna be, I believe, August 6th. It'll be next weekend. This was the weekend of the UFC 214 John Jones Daniel Cormier pay-per-view. This is next weekend, so I will be watching this card. It's a good card. There's some good fights on this card. Let's get to these predictions. In the first fight, we got Andre the Asian Sensation Sukameth. He was 11-4 total, 0-1 in the UFC, fighting Alejandro Perez, who's 17-6-1, so he's more experienced, and he's 3-1 in the UFC with 2 TKO victories, with one including a win over Scott Jorgensen. Take that for what it's worth. Perez is the hometown kid, the Asian Sensation. He looks for finishes. Out of his 11 wins, I believe 9 or 10 of those are finishes, so he's going to be looking for the finish. All 4 of his losses, I believe, were decision. Perez, he seems like the better striker from the research that I did, the better decision fighter, so he's the hometown kid. He doesn't get finished much, so if the Asian Sensation's going to be looking for a knockout. If he doesn't get it, he has a few wins by submission, but Alejandro Perez doesn't get submitted very easily. So, and he actually has some wins by, he has some submission losses, but he also has some submission wins himself. So, I'm looking for Alejandro Perez to take the unanimous decision here. The Asian Sensation is going to be going for the knockout, but I see Alejandro Perez getting the decision from the research that I did, so that is what that is. Let's move on to the next fight, Rashad Evans versus Sam Alvey. I'm taking Sam Alvey to win here. Rashad Evans is on a 3-fight losing streak. He hasn't had a win since Chael Sonnen in 2013. He's only fought one time in 2015, one time 2016, one time in 2017. He took 2014 off, so he's been very inactive. And he's fighting against a very active Sam Alvey, who fought 3 times in 2016. This will be Sam Alvey's 3rd fight in 2017. So that's 6 fights for Sam Alvey in a 2-year span, and he's fighting against the older Rashad Evans. Sam Alvey's only 31. Rashad Evans is about 37, and Rashad Evans is definitely one of my least favorite fighters as far as, man, he can do some boring stuff, man. I haven't never been a huge fan of Rashad Evans, so I won't mind seeing him lose to Sam Alvey here. He might retire. This might be his last fight on his contract for all we know, and he will be in Bellator. But hey, he's got some fights over there. It is what it is. He might move up to 205 at Bellator. He's fighting at 185 here, and he's fighting against Sam Alvey. Smiling Sam Alvey. I'm taking Smiling Sam Alvey. Next fight, we've got a blue corner prediction. Somebody last time said, you picked everyone in the red corner. Motherfucker, I picked who I thought was going to win, and that's what I'm doing here when I'm taking, what's his last name? Badenay. And check this out. And he's going against undefeated hometown kid Martin Bravo. And I'm still picking Badenay to win, because trust me, I did more research on this fight than you're going to do. So just take my word for this. Or don't. Pick the undefeated guy because you see the 12-0 and you're happy when you look at the UFC's rankings. Actually, he's 11-0. I told you I did more research than you. Let's get to the knowledge. So, Humberto Badenay versus Martin El Toro Bravo. Undefeated hometown El Toro hasn't fought for about 9 months since the Ultimate Fighter finale. That was his only fight in the UFC. It was a win, so he is 12-0, but 11 of those were 11-0, and one of those wins came in the UFC Ultimate Fighter house. Since then, he's been on ice waiting for this Mexico City card or for something. I don't know if he was injured, but he hasn't fought in the UFC yet many times, and he's a streaking fighter. I looked at his first 10 fights. It was in promotions I hadn't really heard of, promotions that didn't have headlined cards by people with names. It was just like, it was just named a promotion. So, even though he has 11 wins, one of his last submission win was 3 fights ago, and it was versus a guy that was 2-5. And before, other than that, he had 2 decisions. So, I mean, I did some research. I'm not going to go too far into it, but I'll do a little bit of knowledge on Humberto, the guy I'm picking to win. He's on a 5-fight finishing spree, so he's 13-4. His last 5 fights were wins, and they were all finishes. His last 2 opponents were both on 4- and 5-fight winning streaks. So the pressure was on him. He had a 4-fight winning streak versus his first opponent who had a 4-fight winning streak, and he went in there and got the job done, finished him. That was pressure. Both of your streaks are on the line. And it was named cards. So let's say it was JFC or something, the fight promotion. Well, it was JFC, someone versus someone, instead of just JFL with no names. So the cards he was on looked like more impressive cards when I did the research as well. Now when he was on a 4-fight winning streak, he beat another guy on a 4-fight winning streak. That's pressure. Put his streak on the line versus another streaking fighter, finished him. 5-0, went against another fighter that was 5-0. As far as a 5-fight winning streak, finished that guy too. So he's fought 2 guys in his last 2 fights that were both streaking, which is what Bravo is, and he's on a 5-fight finishing spree. So I did the knowledge here, and I'm picking Boudinot. They don't even have his picture up here. Look at that. That's messed up. I'm picking Boudinot to take the upset and give Martin Bravo, the hometown kid, his first loss. Now, I could be wrong, but anyone could be wrong. So, I'm picking the upset here. It is what it is. Next, we've got Alan Jouban versus Nico Price. This one it's not an upset here. It's Alan Jouban. I think it's going to be Nico Price is undefeated technically, but I think Alan Jouban is going to also hand him his first loss. Nico Price would have had a loss in his last fight. He was getting clipped up for 2 rounds straight. It was going to be a unanimous decision loss, even no matter what he did in the 3rd round, unless he got a knockout. But at the very end of the 2nd round, 5 minutes on the, 0 seconds on the clock, he knocked out his opponent, and so he got a win. But that win ended up being overturned for some reason. I forgot why it was. I think it was weed or something, but I'm not exactly sure. The win was overturned, so Nico Price is 10-0. 2 of those fights were in the UFC. One of them was a really early submission over Brandon Thatch in the 1st round, so he didn't really get to see much of his game. And the only fight we got to see much of Nico Price's game in the UFC, he was getting clipped up, and Alan Jouban is a smart fighter. He was 4-1 going into his last fight versus Gunnar Nelson. He was fighting against Gunnar Nelson, who did Gunnar Nelson things, and was able to beat Alan Jouban. But Alan Jouban fought against Mike Perry before that, a guy that was coming in trying to take his head off. He showed he was a smart fighter, a methodical fighter. He'll pick you apart, and that's what I think I'm going to do to Nico Price here, the same way Nico Price's last opponent was doing. So I got Nico Price losing his first fight too, but this one isn't an upset. They have Jouban as the favorite, it looks like. Next fight, we've got Randa Marcos versus Alexa Grasso. I'm taking Alexa Grasso here. She's in the blue corner, for whoever that was saying I picked everyone in the red corner. She's 9-1 right now, Alexa Grasso. She's 1-1 in the UFC, and her loss was to Felice Herrig, but she outstruck Felice, but she got took down twice, according to the fight cards. Randa Marcos was taken down 4 times in her last fight. Randa's 3-3 in the UFC, and listen to this. Listen to Randa. She's ranked number 9 right now in the women's strawweight division, but listen to her record. Her first fight in the UFC, loss. Next win, then it goes like this: loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. So if we're going off her record, she's literally alternated every time, so she's coming up on a loss. And her last fight was a split decision, so I just see Alexa Grasso getting the W here and taking Randa's spot in the strawweight division. Alexa lost to a more impressive opponent because she lost to Felice Herrig, who's, to me, I mean, arguably she's better than Randa Marcos' last opponent, who was Carla Esparza, which was a split decision loss. Carla Esparza took her down 4 times, and it was still a split decision loss. So I'm going with Alexa Grasso to get the win here, and I believe she's fighting out of Mexico City, or Mexico too, so she's more of the hometown person definitely than Randa Marcos, the hometown fighter. In the main event, we got Sergio Pettis versus Brandon Moreno, and I'm going with Sergio Pettis here. No, whoa, no, I'm not. I'm going with Brandon Moreno here. You can see the blue, the X and the Cormier cry face on Sergio Pettis' head. I'm going with the upset here as well, Brandon Moreno. I mean, it looks like an upset. He's in the blue corner, but I think it's a easier pick here than some of the other fights. Brandon Moreno, I'll explain. Brandon Moreno has been very impressive in the UFC. He's fought 3 times in the UFC. He's 3-0 in the UFC. 2 submissions of the night. One was a win. He had 1 split decision win, but it was it wasn't really arguable. It wasn't controversial. It was definitely his win. So he's 3-0 in the UFC. As Sergio Pettis, he's got 2 losses in the UFC, and one of them was to Blackie Chan, Alex Caceres, who, I mean, he himself said he doesn't focus on fighting. He doesn't want to be a champion. He's waiting on this girl to get out of college or something like that, so they're moving out of the country. That was what Alex Caceres said, and so he hasn't been very impressive in the UFC. He's lost to the Yair Rodriguez and stuff, and he was able to beat Sergio Pettis. He submitted Sergio Pettis. Both of Sergio Pettis' losses in the UFC were being finished. He was submitted by Alex Caceres, and he was knocked out by Ryan Benoit. Ryan Benoit is the gentleman that Brandon Moreno won a split decision over. So Brandon Moreno's 3-0 in the UFC. Sergio Pettis has lost 2 fights to fighters that weren't championship caliber, and he in his last 3 fights, Sergio Pettis is on a 3-fight winning streak. They were all decisions. His 2 wins before his last loss were both decisions. Sergio Pettis will go outstrike guys and go for takedowns and try and get the decision win. The thing about Brandon Moreno is you can't just take him down as freely as you would other fighters because he's got nasty submissions and he'll pull him out of anywhere, submission of the night type stuff. So I'm going with Brandon Moreno. He's either going to win a decision in his hometown or as the hometown fighter, or he's going to get a submission on Sergio Pettis. With that being said, those are my picks. Motherfucker said I pick only the blue corner. Dude, you better do some research, or you better check I got a whole prediction playlist if you want to see my previous predictions, dog. I ain't hiding nothing. Check me out. What the fuck you time at? Put some respect on my prediction. Let the hitters know what your predictions are for this fight card in the comments. Hit thumbs up, hit subscribe. I didn't say it again. Alright, I'm out. What the fuck you time at, dude?